Hello and welcome to this September edition of Coffee with the Pastors. I'm joined by the duo of Pastor Dan's, Pastor Dan Dahl and Pastor Dan Gerrietts. I am Pastor Daniel Hanson. We're so glad that you're joining us today for Coffee with the Pastors. We invite you to grab a cup of your favorite beverage, and whether that be coffee, tea, or whatever that might be, and join us in a conversation as we discuss a little bit about the life and ministry happening at Trinity Lutheran here in Mason City. Now, you may be noticing that our episode is not releasing on the third Tuesday. We are now releasing on the third Saturday. It's going to be at 9:30 in the morning. So we apologize ahead of time for the Saturday morning cartoons that we might be interrupting in your life. But I have good news. We're on demand. If you want to watch Saturday morning cartoons, you can watch us later. So there's even some good news. We can fit both into our schedule. But that begs a question to start us today. Growing up, what was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon? Did you guys have a favorite that you got up every morning Saturday morning to see?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed Captain Kangaroo, and not necessarily, it was Tom Terrific.
Tom Terrific.
Yeah, quite the cartoon. Ventured into Popeye then.
I can't remember if it was Saturday morning or if it was another time. It must have been Saturday morning, but the Transformers cartoon was big when I was growing up. I was a big fan of that. And then when I was really young, I remember, this is long before the Marvel days of what it is now, but there was a cartoon that had a bunch of superheroes all together, like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and it was like League of Heroes or League of
yeah
like that. Like I remember, I thought that was awesome. Wonder Woman was in there, like all of them. Those are my favorites, probably.
Excellent. I was a Digimon guy, so I think these represent three very different eras of cartoons, which is but yeah, Digimon, right. That was my thing every Saturday. I was very, very committed to that storyline. I think I even got up at like 7 o'clock to see it, so it was a big deal. But anyway, we're not here to talk about cartoons. We're here to talk about Trinity and what's going on. And we're going to start out with some good news today and sharing a little bit about our T150 appeal, which wrapped up at the end of August. And we've got some awesome news to share about that today. So Pastor Dan, can you tell us a little bit about the results of that campaign?
You bet. So as many folks know, we launched our second matching gift challenge this summer. And these little mini drives have really been created to help us pay down the remaining construction loan on the T150 capital project, the project that created all of the beautiful renovations in our building, the new technology in our sanctuary, and then the partnership Bihar global mission partnership in the northern part of India there in Bihar with Lutheran World Relief. So our second matching gift challenge this summer, we launched it right around Memorial Day, beginning of June. We said if we can raise an additional $50,000, we have couple of very generous households that are willing to match that with a gift together of $50,000. And so that ran through August 31st. Really pleased to share that over the course of those 3 months, we raised $83,921 in new gifts toward that appeal. Those gifts coming from 121 households, which again, kind of like the original appeal, I get almost as excited about that as the dollar amount is just the number of people that are taking part in whatever way they can in the appeal. So with the $50,000 matching gift, that's almost $134,000 that we were able to add to the total for the appeal and help us significantly, again, pay down the remaining construction loan. For those keeping track of the big picture, our original goal was $4 million for the appeal, and we have now surpassed $3.7 million. So we're getting pretty close at this point to that $4 million goal. And I remain very thankful that we have not had to take any dollars away from any other ministries, nothing out of the general fund, in order to continue to pay our construction loan. So we just want to say thank you to all of the people of Trinity, the remarkable generosity they continue to show, not just toward this appeal, but towards so many areas of ministry and our overall general fund. It's an amazing thing and an amazing gift. So thank you to everybody.
That's awesome. Well, as someone new here, it's been really fun to see the way in which the building project has facilitated some new ministries, and to see the way that the gathering space has been used among other places. And I think one example of that is in the ministry fair this past week. It was really fun to see on we had Rally Sunday this past week, to see that space just jam full of people exploring the different ministries in the community and in the congregation, and seeing how they could get involved. And that was exciting. That was fun to see. And what a neat way to see how ministry is being facilitated through those changes and updates.
Yeah, so many things. I mean, taking the kids out of worship on Sunday for the first time, out that side door. Yeah, the things that are happening in the gathering space, like the exercise class. We have some funeral visitations coming up that are happening there. And then, of course, the technology and the BHAR partnership. I will say real quick, as long as we're talking about it, folks have been asking about the BHAR partnership and saying, what difference has that $100,000 commitment made? And what we can share about that, one is Lutheran World Relief people are actually no longer on the ground. The whole design of that project was to train people in those local communities to create systems of loaning, to create agricultural processes that make them more self-sustaining. And so it's a little bit difficult to report back on BHAR because we're not there, so to speak. It was a project designed to help people be raised up and to be sustaining that way. What we can say is that over COVID hit the BHAR region really hard, as you might imagine, a place with that economic level. It's been pretty difficult, but those agricultural training gifts, those micro loaning with the women's groups that were such a big part of that, have been even more important these past couple of years. And without that, probably the hardships of COVID would have been exponentially worse without that work. So I just want to pass it along, because there have been a number of people, saying, how's it going to be hard? What difference did those gifts make? And everybody in Lutheran World Relief continues to tell us it's saved lives. It's literally saved lives. So that's good.
It's exciting to hear about that. Exciting to hear how those mission dollars do serve others in the gospel. So cool. Well, this was Rally Sunday this past week, and so that meant some changes to our schedule. Things are getting busier here at Trinity, and sometimes with change there comes some growing pains, but also some new opportunities as well, as things are done just a little bit differently. So we had a new worship schedule this past week. I'm curious what your reactions were to some of those changes, and maybe some of the advantages that we saw, and maybe doing things the way that we had them planned this past week. I'm curious to hear from you both about those different worship changes.
Well, I just kind of stepping in here, for the first time. So I don't have anything to compare from, but I certainly enjoyed worship whatever time it is, 9 and 10:30. I know there's a change from the different styles of worship, and it sure seems like the people came and worshiped, and the Lord was smiling, and I think it was well received by all present, and I certainly enjoyed being part of that. It does involve our volunteers who pick up folks around town to get out there a little earlier, and they do that with smiles on their face, and they are here with the folks, and so I certainly enjoyed it, and I look forward to participating throughout the year with this schedule.
Yeah, I too thought it was a really fun morning, a lot of energy, a lot of people at the ministry fair, like you mentioned, Daniel. And, we didn't know, taking the kids out of worship that first time, how that was going to work. I think we learned a couple of things, particularly because we didn't take them right into the education wing. We were doing kind of a special thing last week with a large group. So we took them out into the courtyard, and that was a bit of bit of a hike actually to go out that side door and get down to the courtyard. But this weekend will be different with them just going right into the education wing. But I was surprised by the number of kids in worship at 9 o'clock that were there for that first 15 minutes, and really excited for what we can do with that first 15 minutes with kids, kind of asking the question, what do we want our youth to experience in worship? I think you asked that question, Daniel, this week, and I think that's a fantastic question and something we can play around with, of teaching about worship by experiencing worship in those first 15 minutes, and then letting those kids go to Sunday school. Still a good number of families at 10:30. Those families that want to worship a full hour together, they could do that, and that was pretty awesome. The big thing for me was I kept looking at my watch between 10 o'clock and 10:30, because I've been here long enough. I feel like you get on a Sunday morning, you just know there's another service coming in 15 minutes, right? And so to have that time to visit with people and to make sure things are set up for the next service, that was really nice. And felt really strange too. Like, oh my gosh, we should be starting.
Grace.
Yeah, so that was all a gift, I think, as far as I was concerned.
I only had experienced the 3 services, I think 2 or 3 times this past May, but that was the one thing that really stuck out to me. Was it was only about 15 or 20 minutes, but still that opportunity to visit with people, to connect with them after worship, and not have to be immediately worrying about, oh, like I have to be ready. There's this time to connect, this time to be, and that's some of my favorite part of being church. Is that time to connect and to build relationships with folks. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And likewise excited to see how can those first 15 minutes in the traditional service be a faith forming time for kids who maybe haven't been in worship because they've been in Sunday school. How can we be creative with that time? I'm pretty excited to see what that can look like, because it's I love the liturgy. I love structure. So structure is great, but it's fun to have some creativity within that. And so excited to see what that's going to turn out to be. So, well, in addition to Rally Sunday and our Sunday morning activities with Sunday school beginning this upcoming week, we were also really excited to have Wednesday Night Alive back this past Wednesday night, back in full with the meal and with different faith-forming activities for all ages here at the church. And Pastor Dan, this was your first time experiencing Wednesday Night Alive here at Trinity. I'd love to hear a little bit about what your experience was like, seeing the church full of folks being together for the meal, and staying for Bible study or staying for confirmation or youth activities. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I'm glad I stayed for Bible study, and oh, that's right, I led that. No, but I enjoyed it last night. I'm glad I'm alive and being with people. And yesterday was a wonderful opportunity to celebrate a milestone in my life, and which you brought up. It's a unique opportunity, once in a lifetime, as you gave the announcements. And happy birthday was sung, and Denise had gotten this huge cake from Heidi, and I took more than one piece, and so that was great. We're allowed that on birthdays. And so that was a wonderful time to be with people. I enjoyed the before, the during, and then of course we're out afterwards in our study. But like going in the kitchen, seeing how people are just really active and getting all the made rights ready, and all those, and plates were served through the window, really good fashion. And on the sides are all the condiments, and from the ranch and the French dressing, the ketchup and mustard, and even applesauce. So it was great to everyone, and all the volunteers just helped willingly, and the Lord worked through them with joy. And then the people coming in, there's an atmosphere of joy, I guess, to identify that. As you gather around the tables, you sit with people you don't know, although and sometimes you do, and I would even encourage people who do come in future events to sit with people they don't know and get to know them. And it's an opportunity, informal time to do that, and have a meal, and then and it's from 6 to 6:30, and we're still trying to see if that's a great half hour. It gets everybody fed and going and active and on their way. But then the activities began, and wow, there were a lot of people to go different directions. Pretty soon, as we were leaving, all that was left in the fellowship hall there was tons of confirmation kids, anxious to see what Pastor Daniel is going to have to say to them and all the good things. So then Pastor Dan Gerrietts and I went upstairs to the chapel, and it was pretty full there. And we're leading a series on prayer. Jesus on the mountain. Jesus often prayed, and whether it's on the mountain or on the plains or in the Garden of Gethsemane. And last night I had an opportunity to talk about the Old Testament in prayer. And next Wednesday, Pastor Dan will be talking about Jesus in prayer. And then the third Wednesday, we'll be back kind of summarizing what we've talked about, and then prayer in us, how is it that we pray in our own lives. But last night with the Old Testament, there was several books in the Old Testament. So I narrowed it down to Abraham and Moses and Samuel, and looked at their prayer lives. Each one was so different, and then focused a lot of time on the prayer of lament, which is not a complaint or whining, although we're allowed to do that in lament. First of all, it's a faithful relationship with God, and great is thy faithfulness to him comes out of the Lamentations. So the whole idea is that we walk with the Lord with however we feel. So often people want to hide their feelings and hide their pain stoically, and try to wish it away, not share with other people, even with God. But God says, just bring it on. How you feeling? And God wants to hear it.
Yeah.
And lament is the way. Again, it's a prayer of sharing how we're doing during the restless nights in the hospital when they last forever. And you go, how long, Lord? It could last for weeks there, and it's out of faithfulness. In the end, that God is with you all the way. But during that time, you share that pain and suffering and all the emotions, whatever it is with the Lord, and you discover that God has been with you all along, carrying you in his arms. But in the meantime, you just let God have it,
Yeah.
It's helpful to do it in a prayerful situation.
I found myself as the confirmation teacher being jealous and wanting to go to the adult ed that's coming up because it sounds so interesting. Yeah, well, it's fun to hear your reaction, Dan, and I'm curious to turn to other Dan to see. You've experienced a lot of Wednesday night alives here. What was it like to have things up and running again? I know last year we had some limited things for Wednesday night alive. What was it like to be back in full force back on Wednesday nights?
Yeah, it felt really familiar in a lot of ways, to have the meal, to see the volunteers in the kitchen by early afternoon or even before that, I think, getting ready for the meal. And just a huge shout out to all of our meal volunteers. I think one of the things we recognized last year when we did just classes and didn't have the meal because of some COVID concerns, that meal is so essential to everything that happens, both before and after it. So grateful for Mary Charleston and Nancy Nelson and all of the volunteers that were down there and are going to help us keep this going. But yeah, it felt really familiar. It's great to celebrate a big birthday for Pastor Dahl last night. That was really fun. And I love to see the way that you jumped in, Daniel, to the leadership and the hosting of it. It was like you've been doing it for a million years, so that was really cool. It was a great feel, to have the confirmation kids coming in. That's what I've always loved about Wednesday Night Alive, is it becomes this huge intersection of all of these different parts of the congregation, youth and junior high, little ones, some of our wiser, more longtime folks, neighborhood people that really, that's their primary contact point with Trinity, is to come and just to share a meal and fellowship. It's a beautiful thing. And it felt really good to see that all happening again last night. So I just left really grateful. And then to end the night, I'm walking out the door here in the choir, rehearsing later in the evening. It was beautiful. So yeah, it was great to hear Dan Dahl. I hear him teaching last night. I just really enjoyed that. It's going to be fun next couple of weeks with that series. And then in addition to all of the other things that are happening, there's going to be a new series. It would be in 3 weeks, 3 Wednesdays. We're going to start a series on care for creation. And that's going to be a series of guest speakers talking about different issues related to caring for creation. We know that care of creation is a biblical principle. It's a faith issue, that God calls us to be good stewards of this earth, that it's not for us to abuse and use up, but to care for as a beloved gift from God, right? So we have a number of people from our community that'll be coming in and talking about different ways that people in their personal lives, in the business, in the farming world, are working on caring for creation. One of the very first is going to be Jason Reiner, who is a Trinity member. He's a choir director out at Nyack, but he is also a farmer, and he has been developing a new system of planting and raising crops using rechargeable electric machinery. And that would be just a revolution to the ways that we farm. And recently got recognized as a semifinalist for a big grant, I think, from Farm Bureau. He's going to come talk. And I believe the Nyack Choir is going to come and sing as a part of his presentation on that first Wednesday. So anyhow, lots of exciting stuff coming up. I know we have some faith and wellness outreach offerings that are coming in a couple of weeks too. There's a young women's group that meets, stuff for kids of all ages. So encourage folks to check out Wednesday Night Alive in all of our communications and see how they might plug in. It is a great evening.
If you're not aware, it starts at 6 o'clock. So supper is from 6 to 6:30, and then most programming is about 6:30 to 7:30 with choir from 7:30 to 8:30. So yeah, check that out.
And last night was the first night of 7th, 8th grade confirmation class, right?
It was. I've
So
decided that this year our theme is going on an adventure. So I've been thinking about confirmation this year as kind of like a canoe trip, or kind of like a backpacking trip, is that we're going on a journey together, and maybe we're walking into some new territory. And maybe we're exploring some new ideas, some new concepts. Maybe they'll be somewhat familiar or sometimes very familiar, but they're still exploring for each of us to do. And last night, our theme was exploring those who are traveling with us. And so we spent some time trying to get to know each other. We did some get to know you games and had a little chaotic fun out in the courtyard. And so it's interesting for me how many schools different confirmation students come from, which is kind of a new dynamic for me as a pastor. And so that's one thing we want to be really intentional about, is community building and trust building. It's hard to be vulnerable and ask deep questions about life and faith if you don't know who you're sitting across the table from. And so, and especially having had COVID with so many things disrupted, I think creating a safe and trustworthy environment is going to be really important in this first year as we think about spending time together and going on a journey. So we had some fun last night, and hopefully we learned a few names and learned a little bit about each other. It's going to be a work in progress, but the good news about this adventure is it just keeps going. It's not just 2 years that we're trying to get to the end of our trip. We're just starting out and trying to build a foundation on the foundation that's already been built. So I'm pretty stoked. I went home and I kind of collapsed. I was like, "Ooh, this is a little different than," but different in all kinds of great ways. So I'm pretty excited for what's coming around the corner.
Awesome. That's awesome.
But there's some other exciting things coming around the corner. Touch base real quick about God's Work Our Hands Sunday. That's not going to be until October, but maybe that's a phrase people have heard. Our ELCA encourages congregations to host a Sunday or a day out in the community to organize some service project. It's often called God's Work Our Hands. Maybe you've seen pictures of people in those yellow shirts. It says God works our hands, but our servant cabinet is working on organizing a Sunday. And maybe Dan, you can tell us just a little bit about what's coming up. I know there's probably a few things still to be planned on that, but.
Yeah, so we decided this year, the servant cabinet decided to move God's Work Our Hands to October 23rd. It's a Saturday in October. And one of the reasons they did that, because doing it on Rally Sunday is the day that a lot of churches do it, but it's sometimes hard to get people signed up and committed to it. So moving it to the 23rd, we are planning a congregation-wide service day. And so there's going to be 5 or 6 different options for people to serve at or serve as a part of that day. Several agencies that are social service agencies in town, like I believe Northern Lights Homeless Shelter and Community Kitchen and Hawkeye Harvest, all have like cleaning or organizing kind of projects, the kind of things that they just need to get done, but they need a group of people to do it. We reached out to them and said, what can we do? We could bring probably a handful or 10 people to each of those places. Let us know. So we've got some projects lined up there between 1 and 3 or 4 o'clock on that Saturday, October 23rd. We're going to have some projects here at the church building for people that maybe aren't as interested in doing lifting or moving, that kind of thing, like maybe writing cards to some of our homebound, the kind of project that anybody who can sit and write could do. And we may try to get some local service projects with individual people, if there's yard cleanup, those kinds of things. I know we've got a painting project with Parks and Rec or the city, where we're going to paint, I think, the shelter or the shelters at the youth softball and baseball complex in town. So a lot of different things coming up, as well as, we recognize not everybody might be available on Saturday, October 23rd. And so we have a project that can be done on a couple of days in that week leading up to the 23rd. Like I think it's a Tuesday, Thursday. So check this out. We have sign-up sheets now. If you want to look and say, yeah, I would really love to be a part of that project, we're going to let folks sign up. So it's kind of first come, first serve, but we really want this to be a big day of service for the whole church. We're going to be talking a lot about it in the coming weeks as we get closer to that date. Never tried this before, but I think there could be something really cool about Trinity as a congregation going out on one day in our community and trying to make an impact.
Cool. Well, mark your calendars. Try to keep that day open, or if that day doesn't work, it sounds like there's some other great ways to be involved in it. Excited to see how that all plays out next month. So October 23rd, you said?
October 23rd.
October 23rd. Mark your calendars. We'll double check.
Yeah, I think that too. It's a Sunday, not a Saturday. It's a Sunday.
It is a Sunday. Okay.
October 23rd, but it's a Sunday, not a Saturday. So,
all right.
My bad.
Look ahead in communications. There will be lots more information about ways you can get involved coming up in the near future. Well, one more event that's coming up in October that's a newer thing at Trinity is that we will be celebrating Confirmation Sunday in October. We've done that with a few classes, it sounds like, but we've moved confirmation from May into October. And so our 9th grade class will be preparing to publicly confess their faith on Reformation Sunday, October 30th. That will be at the 10:30 service. Make sure I get my time right here. The 10:30 service. And so if you'd like to support those folks, so we encourage you to mark that date as well. But part of the process, they're doing a lot of things to prepare for their confirmation. And one of those things is to pick a confirmation verse, a verse that's been maybe meaningful to them, or a verse that speaks to them as they think about living their life of faith ahead. And Pastor Dan, you had the great suggestion that we could briefly discuss today what our confirmation verses were. And so I'm really curious to hear from each of you. What was your confirmation verse, and did you have a reason that you picked that, and or maybe how has that verse spoke to you, or maybe you found out later on that wasn't the most meaningful verse to you? That's okay too, because our faith journeys take us in different ways. But I'm curious to hear about what you picked for your confirmation verse.
Well, I was confirmed right here at Trinity some years ago, and the verse was chosen for me.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't choose it. So, but it was a great verse. It's verses. And it's from Matthew 11, 28 through 30. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Wonderful verses. I couldn't have chosen better. Actually, the verses that have carried me through life, through the ups and downs of life, and that we all experience, and giving our burdens to the Lord is it's always great to be able to do that. And Jesus said, "I'm your deposit. Just give it to me." And so we do. And I've shared those verses with people nowadays, of course, in hospital visits with people going through difficult experiences. When I was a missionary in Brazil, of course, Brazil is very modern in terms of agriculture and competing with Iowa with soybeans and everything else. But they also have small farmers who still use oxen and yokes. And so I saw that really for the first time. And I thought that came alive, that these verses came alive. Felt like I was walking, on this planet 2,000 years ago. But there I was with a small farmer. And the yoke is not complicated at all, and it's gentle. It's not meant to torture the poor oxen. They're designed to be comfortable, and if a stronger oxen does more work, the other one kind of guides along. So I saw Jesus, and when Jesus said, "Put the yoke on ourselves," Jesus is here in the yoke. We're here, and those times that we just are very weak and need some extra pick up and go, Jesus is just kind of carrying us along. And and it's very gentle. The yoke is not heavy. And in that sense, especially for oxen, but especially for Jesus Christ. So I thought, boy, that really came alive, with the yoke. Nowadays you see yokes as planters and in front of garages and so on, which is great to see. And that always reminds me of these verses.
That's a neat image.
It is.
Yeah, my confirmation, I was not a model confirmation student. I was not. I was much more interested in playing basketball before at the break and after confirmation than I probably was studying the content of confirmation. And so when it came time to pick a confirmation verse, I was not diligent in doing that, and it was getting close to the deadline that this needed to happen. And I remember my father giving me a stack of cards, like little flashcards that have verses on them. And he was basically like, choose one of these, so we can have a confirmation verse for you. And so I looked through them, and I ended up settling on 1 Corinthians 12, 4-6, which is there are many different kinds of gifts, but one Spirit, many different ways of serving, but one Lord. And at the time, the reason I think that verse spoke to me was because I was interested in music, and I was interested in sports, and I was interested in all kinds of different activities in school, a wide array. And even in a small town, there weren't a lot of kids that were as into singing and playing the bassoon as they were playing football, I'll say. But I was. And so that verse kind of spoke to me that way. What's been interesting for me is even though I didn't have a lot of thoughtfulness in how I chose that, the Holy Spirit must have been at work, because that verse has become absolutely foundational for me in terms of how I understand ministry and how I understand church, right? That I think at the heart of the church, in whatever form it takes, anywhere it has been and will be, there is this kind of rooted idea that comes from 1 Corinthians 12 about the giftedness of the church together, and how there are all these different gifts from all of these different people that come together to form the one body of Christ, and how the Holy Spirit uses that in incredibly powerful ways to meet and to care and renew and resurrect a diverse world. And that has just become foundational to the way that I see everything. It's the way that I think about church staff. In a place like this, I look across our team, our church staff, and the remarkable different gifts that our team brings, especially right now as we're getting back to full speed. And what an amazing job they're all doing with that. I think about our leadership, our lay leadership, and just the congregation as a whole. What remarkable different gifts, from people who roll and make lefse, to people that are woodworkers, to people that just like to notice somebody new in the room and go say hello to them, to people that just pray silently without telling anybody else that they're doing it, and everything else. That verse has just become foundational. So God knew what God was doing in spite of me, as often is the case. So yeah,
that's great. That's great. Well, my confirmation verse was Matthew 7:7-8. Let's see if I can get this right. Ask and it shall be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be open. At least that was the old NIV translation that I had to memorize and remember. But I reflected and wondered, was that a selfish verse to pick? Like, did I pick that because it was like, oh, God will give me what I ask, so I'll get what I want? And I've wondered and I've reflected, did I pick that because I thought it was some kind of transactional God? And I decided no, that wasn't why I picked that verse, that it was a different, that there, for some reason that verse stuck out. And I think it's taken until I was older to figure out why it stuck out. And I think the reason is, what I find so powerful about this text is the sense of a God who is interacting with you. It's a God of deep relationship. And so it's not about, well, I'm leveraging God so I get what I want in life, ask and I'll receive it. But it's about this God who is attentive, right? A God who's knocking at the door, a God who is searching me out, and a God as I search out that will be found. And so I have, as I think back to this verse, I don't know if I picked this verse again or not. But as I think about how it's meaningful for me today, it speaks to this God who deeply longs to be in relationship with us, a God who is attentive to our needs, a God who is listening, and a God who is always desiring to journey with us. So I think about this verse, and whenever I read it in my devotions or whenever it comes up in the lectionary, I smile a little bit and think about the verse. So but it's fun to hear those stories. Right? It's fun to hear how you picked your verses and how they've continued to speak to you today. And maybe you listening at home today, if you'd like to share in the comments, you can share, what was your confirmation verse? How is that verse meaningful for you today? Maybe there's a story behind why you chose it. We'd love to hear those stories if you want to share those in the comments today. I'm really excited to see what the verses our confirmation students pick this year. One of my favorite parts of being confirmation teacher is doing the final interviews with them as they summarize what they've learned in confirmation and as they articulate for themselves why these verses and declarations of faith are meaningful to them. So we'll look forward to that. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when I was growing up, I think we had to recite our confirmation verse at the confirmation service. And so that required us to memorize it, which sometimes I would say went into the selection process.
Sure.
You don't want to choose anything too long, right? Because you'd have to say it in front of a congregation. And so I do think one of the rules was you couldn't choose Jesus wept. You know, the shortest verse, right? That comes, I think, from the Lazarus death and resurrection. Right? So you couldn't choose that because otherwise everybody would be like, "Yeah, I'm going to choose that one because I can remember it." But yeah, we don't do that here. At least we haven't in the past, right? Make kids choose them. So that probably helps with the process.
Absolutely. Yes. If you want to pick a long Pauline run-on sentence, you can do that, because if that's what's meaningful and speaks to you, you can do that. You don't need to worry about getting all the words right at having memorized them. So good deal. Well, thanks for joining us on this Saturday or whatever day that you're tuning in. We'll look forward to doing it next week in October and see all the awesome things that God is planning and doing among us. So thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.